After picking up passengers in Kobe, it was time to leave Japan behind and set sail over the East China Sea towards Hong Kong. But before we get there were two things on the ship that really intrigued me. I got transported back to the Shogun era through one of the oldest performance traditions that Japan has ever produced. And I ended up lying on a massage table on a moving ship with a needle in my arm, wondering if this was the right move. Let's go! Hey, my name is Neal, and at this point I had been a few days on the boat, and I was settling in fast. The first few days on this ship, and especially a ship of this size, 15 decks, it takes some time to figure out where to go for what. How do you navigate a ship with 2,000 people? What is the best place to look at the ocean? But as the days pass, you find your regular spots, your rhythm, your people. One of the things I quickly realized is that on this ship you never have to be bored. But what makes Peaceboat truly spectacular is that they actively encourage each active participant to also organize their own events. So if you have a passion or an interest, something from your own culture you would like to share, Peaceboat gives you the space and the opportunity to do so. This really leads to this really nicely, organically formed alternative set of programs that exists next to the official ones. Music was everywhere on the ship. And I mean that literally. Different areas of the boat had live performances happening at different times of day. There was a flutist from Japan who played in the lounges. Delicate, meditative music that paired perfectly with watching the ocean pass by. A quartet from Venezuela who brought an entirely different energy, warm, passionate, friendly South American soul. Two Japanese pianists and singers sang mostly Japanese songs that many passengers seemed to recognize. And in the evenings, a band from the Philippines who cranked up the energy completely in the wheelhouse bar with very danceable music. What made it special was that these weren't one-off performances. All of these musicians were on board for the entire voyage, 3 months. They became part of the community, part of the rhythm of daily life on the ship. One thing Peaceboat does really well is create opportunities for people to meet each other. You think this is a simple thing, but on a ship of 2,000 people, where everybody can speak different languages and comes from different cultures, this actually can be quite the challenge. They organized activities and icebreaker games for people to introduce who they are and why they came onto the ship. And the reasons for people coming on the ship were very interesting, ranging from maybe just trying to learn a language to getting out of the daily routine that you have back home. One of those sessions ended up in a party in the Legends bar, where people danced, laughed, got to know each other better, and the language barrier started to dissolve. I also joined one of the salsa events, which was really chaotic and really fun. You basically switch partners every 30 seconds. So you're simultaneously trying to learn the salsa steps and have conversations with new people again and again and again. It's honestly really a good way to meet new people and enjoy yourself. Two other highlights from those sea days that I have to mention. First, karaoke, which makes complete sense on a Japanese ship because karaoke is literally a Japanese word meaning empty orchestra. Every single night, one of the pubs became a karaoke venue, and people sang their hearts out with absolutely zero reservations. I'll be honest, I am not somebody who is very comfortable singing in front of a crowd, so I was very much an audience member for this particular activity. And then there was the passenger magician, a fellow traveler who turned out to be an amateur magician and put on a show for anyone who wanted to watch. He taught us how to fold a $1 bill in a specific way and unfold it again like a $5 or a $10 bill. It was insightful to see the ins and outs of this magic trick and the manual dexterity required to pull it off. You never know what you get to learn when you put 2,000 people on a ship together for 3 months. But the experience for me on those first few days that felt most unique and very ancient at the same time was watching this traditional Japanese No performance for the first time in my life. No is Japan's oldest theatrical tradition. It has been performed since the 14th century continuously. That's over 700 years. And you can feel that it's that old. Nothing about No is fast. It's all very slow and very deliberate. The vocals are very different from Western music. It's kind of this controlled, otherworldly sound that really takes years to master. The performers often wear specific masks that represent ghosts, demons, or gods. And also their outfits are quite extraordinary. It was fascinating to learn that No was performed regularly in the Shogun era. It was not just a form of entertainment, but it was also a form of ritual. Feudal lords and shoguns attended No as a sign of power and discipline. It reflected samurai ideals. Watching No on the deck of a ship somewhere on the East China Sea made me feel this connection back to the Shogun era. After the show, I got to meet the performers personally and take a photo with them. I found it quite inspiring to stand next to somebody who has dedicated their life to mastering a 700-year-old craft. Over those days at sea, I kept meeting more and more people. Over shared dinners, in the hallways, on the deck watching the ocean. The passenger community on the Peaceboat is fascinating in its composition. The 2,000 people on board are majority from Asian countries, primarily Japan, given that Peaceboat is a Japanese NGO, but also China, Korea, Malaysia, and many others. The age range is broad, but the average skews towards the high end. The majority of passengers are retired, which means you have an enormous concentration of people with extraordinary life experience and stories to tell. One man I met was particularly inspiring. He was almost 80-year-old, he had a pacemaker, and he worked out almost daily. And up until recently, he still participated in marathons. Meeting him was eye-opening. He was a man who could have decided he had the right now to slow down. But instead, he was on a ship circumnavigating the globe and doing workouts every day. His daily routines, his positive mindset, and his dedication to his health motivated me to keep focusing on my health so I can stay healthy long into the future. A few days in, I decided to treat myself to a massage on board. It was on the pricier side. Ship prices are what they are. But I was curious what a massage on a moving ocean felt like. The answer is surprisingly good. There is something about the idea of being on the ocean that adds to the whole experience. But the massage itself turned out to be the least interesting part of that appointment. Because during the massage, I started chatting with the therapist, and I learned that they were also a trained acupuncturist. I've heard anecdotal evidence about acupuncture, how people swear by it for pain relief or for muscle relaxation. I even heard a story of somebody who had a hiccup for months and months. Nothing made it go away until they tried acupuncture. I've always been curious about it, but never quite curious enough to try it. But now, I was on a ship. I was there with a trained individual, with needles available. I thought, when else? So I let curiosity lead me. I didn't want to have a full treatment. I was just very curious what it would feel like to have a needle placed. So I asked very politely if they would do that, and they agreed. So they placed the needle in my left forearm, around here. And it didn't hurt. That was the first surprise. But it was an interesting sensation around this spot. Not painful, a little bit like pressure maybe, and it spread around the area. The sensation was there as long as the needle stayed in. As soon as the needle was taken out, the sensation slowly disappeared. One needle probably didn't do anything useful, but I'm still glad I asked. That's kind of the whole reason of doing this journey, to try new things. Four days after leaving Kobe, We arrived at our first port of call, Hong Kong. It is not my first time in Hong Kong, so I didn't arrive completely blind, but it's still something different arriving by a ship. And in the case of Hong Kong, a city with most skyscrapers in the world, around 500 to 600 of them, seeing the skyline emerge from the water is really spectacular. We had about 8 hours ashore, enough to get a feel for the city, but not enough to venture far. I explored with 4 other passengers from the ship, and we made our way through Kowloon on foot. The streets of Kowloon have this energy, dense, layered, a lot happening at once. It's quite the busy place. Many double-decker buses weaving through streets, flanked by humongous towers of glass, steel, and concrete. We walked the waterfront promenade with its famous views back across Victoria Harbour towards Hong Kong Island. Along the way, we passed the former Kowloon Canton Railway clock tower, one of the last remaining pieces of the railway line that dates back to 1915. Everything else is gone, redeveloped, transformed. This tower just stands there as a quiet reminder that beneath all that glass and steel, there are layers of history. And a few steps further along the promenade, Bruce Lee, a bronze statue of one of the most famous martial artists and film stars the world has ever produced, arms in a signature pose, looking out over the harbor. He grew up in Hong Kong, and the city clearly hasn't forgotten him. Then we found Kowloon Park, right in the middle of all this density and concrete and noise. And inside it, completely surreal, a flock of pink flamingos, just living there. In one of the world's most urban environments, the contrasts of that tropical pink, the green park, and the buildings in the background made for some cool visuals. We stopped for dim sum, mushroom dumplings, a noodle soup, hot tea. Simple, perfect. Exactly right for a warm Hong Kong afternoon. And then there was the pants situation. From Vienna, I had only brought 2 trousers, because traveling for a year requires quite minimalistic packing with a small backpack. And within the first week, one of these pants ripped already. And the rip was not in a subtle place, it was right at the crotch, which basically meant I could not wear these pants anymore in any public situation. With less than an hour left before the ship's departure, I found myself speed running through Kowloon looking for pants. I ended up finding a Uniqlo, grabbed something that was about my size, paid, and ran off. The pants turned out to fit, the ship didn't leave without me, so I'm calling it a win. With our little group back on board, we watched Hong Kong disappear behind us as the ship pulled out of the harbor, leaving behind the 500 skyscrapers and moving into the South China Sea. Next up, Singapore. In the next video, we arrive in Singapore, and a little piece of Vienna finds me here. It's a reminder that even if you're on the other side of the world, familiar faces can be found. Keep letting your curiosity lead. I'll see you there.